We're going to look at what productivity can mean and different measures and different methods of measuring it and how it can be improved. And we're going to look at capacity utilisation and how to calculate it and the benefits and the problems of working at full capacity as well. So firstly, adding value. It's just where there's a difference between the value of the output and the value of the inputs used to provide them. So it means that the output produced is worth more than the input. So if you think right back to the first lesson you probably had in business studies, and you were thinking about what is a business is any organisation that tries to add value to the inputs they use. So the difference between the cost of the raw materials and the selling price. So we look at Van Gogh's painting of sunflowers. To produce that piece of art will not have cost millions and millions of pounds, because it would cost millions of pounds to buy that painting. It probably cost a few, or what would be the equivalent of a few pounds today to purchase his oil paints and the canvas and all those types of things. If he painted on a canvas, I don't know. If he painted on a canvas, it might have been a piece of wood or something like that, because I don't think he had very much money. But the point is that these inputs that he used are worth less than the output that you produced, and that is what a business is, that you transform something, and by doing that you add value, so you're able to charge more. So if we're looking at an example, let's look at a restaurant. Some of the ways that a restaurant maybe adds value is that they organise all of the ingredients coming into the restaurant and they bring them all together, so we could call that the inbound logistics. They also actually prepare the food for you, so they're carrying out a task there, and the total cost of cooking in, getting those ingredients, will be less than what they're going to sell it for. They also serve the food to you as well, so they add value through that. And if you look and bring all of those kind of functions together, those factors and those processes together, we can see that there's a lot of value being added, and that's why people are willing to pay so much more for a product, or particularly a meal that they eat in a restaurant, than it actually costs to make the meal. And this is quite an interesting article from a few years ago, looking at pizzas and the I suppose the profit margins, but we could call it the added value that you get from the pizzas. So just looking at the raw materials excuse me, a bit of a cough at the moment. Just looking at the raw materials purely, we can see that it costs £1.25 to make this cheese and tomato large pizza, and they're selling it for £12.49. So the added value, as long as the labour didn't cost anything, was £11.23. But here's a past paper question. What is added value? So you just need the definition there. So the difference in the value of the inputs. So it's I suppose the difference in the value of the output minus the value of the inputs. And then calculate the added value for each ukulele. Nice picture of a ukulele there, in case you didn't know what it is. That Miles guitars will produce. So it's 130 minus these numbers here. So minus 20 is 110. And then 100, and then 90, I'm doing mental maths here, 91, and then 87, if you add minus all of those figures off the 130. So the added value is £87 that they're adding. Okay, so what does productivity actually mean? So this is the next topic now we're moving on to. So if we look at productivity, it's just the measure of the efficiency. Now, there's actually lots of different ways of measuring productivity, but it's looking at your measure of how much output do you get to the inputs that you're producing. So if we compare two businesses here, this on the left-hand side, I'm saying that this is the input. I've made some nice numbers here. So they have 7 units of input and they make 15 units of output, or business B have 4 units of input and make 15 units of output. So which one's more efficient? Well, we'd say business B is more efficient because they're using less to produce the same amount of output. If we look at a different way around, we've got business A using 7 units of input even to make 15 units of output, and business B 7 units of input, 10 units of output. Which one's more efficient? Well, business A, because they're both using the same amount of input, but business A is producing more output. So it might be that they're producing less input to produce the same amount, or it might just be that they're producing more output using the same amount of inputs, or it might be a mix of the two, because no two businesses are going to be exactly alike. But that is, in brief, what productivity is trying to measure. So there's not one way of measuring it. You can measure it in a number of ways. So we can look at labour productivity when we're looking at the productivity of work, as this is, absenteeism and labour turnover, and we'll go over these in turn as well to look at what they mean. Or we can look at capital productivity, and capital productivity is just how productive your machines are and how much your machines are used. And we're going to go into this one in a bit more detail later on. So first of all, labour productivity. So this is measured, it's the output that you're producing over the period that you're looking at, divided by the number of employees. So it's an average output per employee. So what's going to affect this? Well, if you have lots of employees that are absent quite a lot of the time, that will affect the average output. How much skills and training they have. The more skills they have, we assume the better they will be at producing output, and the quicker they are at producing output. Maybe how many resources or the machinery that they have to use and the tools that they have to help them, and how motivated they are as well. Labour turnover, a different measure, also known as the churn rate, is a percentage that measures how many staff are leaving the organisation each year, or whatever period you're looking at. So it's number of staff leaving in a year divided by the average number of staff employed, or the number of staff employed times 100. So it's going to be a percentage. So all of these things could affect whether people stay or leave. Now, you will get some churn. You will get some people leaving, natural. They call it sometimes natural wastage, but it doesn't sound that nice. But people retiring, people taking maternity leave, and naturally, people will, after a while, move on to other jobs. So we'd expect, it depends on the business, to be honest, but we'd expect labour turnover to be something, unless it's a very small organisation. I can't imagine that it would be zero. But if you've got a labour turnover rate of 50%, that means that 50% of the people each year are leaving. So we're thinking about, the impact of that. Training costs and all of those kind of recruitment costs are very high, and maybe lost skills and lost knowledge when the people leave. And so you maybe get a dip in productivity. So we wouldn't say that a very high labour turnover rate would be very beneficial. But again, it depends on the industry. If you look at kind of part-time work or work in a fast food restaurant, not many people aspire to be waiters or waitresses at McDonald's. They take that job and it's all right, in the short term, and it's all right maybe when they're at university. But I don't think people dream of working there for, long periods of time. So we would expect to see that type of job have a higher labour turnover than, say, the labour turnover in maybe a job with lots of exciting promotion opportunities, maybe like Google or something like that. So absenteeism is measuring the number of staff absent, usually on one day. So it's just a percentage again, so number of staff absent divided by total number of staff times 100. And again, we're not just necessarily looking at people skiving. We're also looking at people maybe taking time off because they're ill, maybe they're under a lot of stress, but also maybe people who are like, just got a little bit of a sniffle and they're like, I can't be bothered today. So policies on absence as well, whether it's frowned upon, will have an effect. Okay, and then capital productivity is your output divided by the number of machines or machine hours. So this here, if you times that by 100, that should be times by 100 actually, it's a bit of a mistake in my presentation. But if you times that by 100, what you get is the average output per machine, of a machine per hour. If you just divide it by number of machines, rather than having the hours in there, it would be the average amount of output per machine. So what could affect the capital productivity? So new technology tends to be a bit more productive, as in it produces more, the outputs better and more advanced technology as well. And when did it have maintenance on this technology? Is it kind of a machine that always breaks down or not? Because that could help improve the productivity. So how do you improve these things? Well, I've come up with a few things here. So reduce absenteeism, and you really need to bring your knowledge of the other areas in to be able to do this. So let's start making a few notes. So how could you reduce absenteeism? Maybe have, you know, clear policies, maybe have better working conditions to reduce stress levels, those types of things. How would you improve motivation? Well, there might be some non-financial or even financial motivation tools. Maybe there could be teamwork, because Mayo liked that and thought that that would be a good way of increasing motivation. There's loads of things there that you can talk about from the HR section. Improve technology. You'd obviously need a little bit of investment here. I think that's quite straightforward. And staff training. This is more of a, not how would you achieve this? Well, you just need to make sure that you put it in maybe through the workforce plan, making sure that that's like top priority. But training should improve the skills and hopefully the flexibility as well of the workers. So this should be able to improve productivity. But this is a quite nice question, sometimes about 8 marks, about how do you improve productivity. So I would look through past paper questions to have a look at that one. Okay, last way of measuring productivity, I suppose, capacity utilisation. So it's the percentage of a firm's total possible production capacity that is actually being used. So it's the output, the actual output, divided by the maximum output they could be producing. So if we've got a stadium and it's got 40,000 seats and 30,000 are filled, then this business, whatever football club it is operating at 75% capacity utilisation. So if we have low capacity utilisation, you've got lots of spare or excess capacity. So you might want to increase demand for your products so that you can get more of your machines and more of your workers kind of working. Or you might switch to producing other products. Or you might, in the long run, maybe reduce the number of staff you have, or reduce the amount of space you have, like downsize to a smaller factory. However, if you have very high capacity utilisation, you might need to increase the amount of total output that you could potentially produce. So you might work shifts or overtime or have seasonal workers. That's very much what shops do in the run-up to Christmas. So very much increasing their capacity utilisation then. You might outsource. That's a A2 topic there. Or you might even, in the long run, expand your factory. So what are the benefits of operating at full capacity? Well, average costs are minimised, and the reason for this is you are spreading the fixed costs over a greater number of units. So that's good. That's increasing your profit margins. Staff may also feel more secure in their jobs, and this might help with kind of motivation. And why do we want them to be motivated? Because they're more productive. And it might help to attract new employees. People don't tend to want to work at places where they're not doing very well, because it's a bit worrying. You might think, oh, they don't have very much business, and maybe my job wouldn't be very secure. So it's hard to recruit people for those types of jobs. So if you're working at full capacity, it might be easier to recruit employees. And it's like, you know, you walk past a restaurant and if one's very empty, you might start thinking, oh, why? Is it not very good? But if it's very full, you might have a better brand image. So why would that be a positive? Well, you might be prepared. Customers may be prepared to pay a higher price. So that would be good. However, there are certain disadvantages. Stress of working at full capacity for not just workers but machinery as well, because there's no time for training or maintenance and those types of things. So you might have a higher absenteeism rate, or you might even make people so unhappy so that you have an increasing labour turnover rate, so they're leaving the organisation. And with the machinery one, you may get more breakages as the machines are used to full capacity. No time for training or maintenance, so you may not keep up with competitor developments, with competitor developments. And you may have to turn away new orders as well. And when customers, you have to turn them away because you don't have capacity for them, they may not come back. They may go to a competitor. Oh, there we go. So that's all of productivity, what is meant by adding value, the difference between, should we go back to that definition? When the output produced is worth more than the inputs used to provide them, so the difference between the cost of the raw material and the selling price. How do businesses add value? Well, we went through the example of the restaurant there. How does the ukulele business add value? Well, they make the ukuleles for the customer, which is not something I could do. What is productivity? It's your ratio of your outputs, your inputs to your outputs, and there's lots of different ways of measuring that. Labour turnover, absenteeism, labour productivity, capital productivity, capital utilisation as well. Capacity utilisation is just measuring the percentage of your capacity that you're actually using. So it's the actual output divided by the potential output. Benefits and problems of working at full capacity as well. We've just been through those and how capacity utilisation could be improved, and also you need that explain how productivity can be improved. So usually these two, this one, sorry, and that one are like 8 more questions, and I think I've got an example of one there. Explain the advantages and disadvantages to a manufacturing business such as Johnson's Pallets of operating at 100% capacity utilisation. Alright, so those are all of the specification areas for this course.